He did it in front of everyone. Let's be honest, Mia's not leadership material, Mark said, grinning like he'd cracked a harmless joke. My throat tightened instantly. 20 heads turned toward me in perfect unison. No one spoke. No one moved. My presentation slides still glowed on the screen behind him. The project I'd built from scratch over 3 months, now hijacked by his casual smugness. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Thanks for the feedback, I managed, voice steady while my palms burned with humiliation. Inside, I was shaking violently. That was the day my director told me I'd never lead a team. A week later, he was reporting directly to me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning, when I still believed hard work spoke for itself. When I thought competence would naturally rise to the surface. When I didn't understand that silence could be weaponized against you, that visibility mattered as much as ability. My name is Mia Carter. I'm 32 years old, and for 5 years, I poured everything into CoreVantage Technologies. I delivered on every impossible deadline, skipped lunches to finish projects, worked weekends to save initiatives from collapse, thinking someone, someday, would notice my dedication. Turns out, people only notice when you fail. And Mark made absolutely sure everyone noticed my supposed failure that day. The restroom mirror didn't lie to me. Mascara smudged beneath red-rimmed eyes. My hands gripped the cold porcelain sink until my knuckles whitened. I stared at my reflection until it steadied, until the trembling stopped. He'd humiliated me publicly to remind everyone in that room who held power. I dabbed my eyes with rough paper towels, straightened my navy blazer, and whispered to myself firmly, never again. That wasn't a breakdown. It was a beginning. When I returned to my desk, the office buzzed with careful silence. People typed with sudden intensity, eyes glued to screens as if their lives depended on it. Nobody met my gaze directly. The pity was almost worse than the humiliation itself. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend, Carla, who worked 2 floors down. Coffee tomorrow? Heard what happened. You okay? I typed back quickly. I'm fine. Rain check. I wasn't fine at all. But I also wasn't broken. I opened my laptop and did something I'd never done before in 5 years. I created a private folder labeled Documentation. Inside, I began cataloging methodically every project I'd completed, every email where Mark had claimed my work as his own, every meeting where my ideas were dismissed only to be praised enthusiastically when he repeated them 10 minutes later. Not for revenge. For clarity. For understanding. I wanted to see the architecture of unfairness laid bare before me. By Monday morning, the story had already been completely rewritten. She froze during the presentation. Someone whispered near the coffee machine. I heard it clearly. Mark had to step in and save the whole thing. I heard variations of it twice more before lunch. Each retelling painted me weaker, him stronger, more capable, more necessary. He was controlling the narrative masterfully, and he was winning. I smiled politely at colleagues who suddenly forgot to copy me on important emails. I nodded when people asked if I was feeling better, as if I'd been sick rather than publicly degraded and humiliated. But I noticed patterns emerging. Every project I touched performed significantly better than those I didn't. Every timeline I managed came in early or on schedule. Every budget I reviewed saved money consistently. The numbers didn't lie, even if people did. I started saving screenshots religiously. Not just of my work, but of the timestamps, the revision histories, the Slack messages where I'd caught errors before they became disasters that could cost the company. I backed everything up meticulously to my personal cloud storage, just in case I needed it later. Mark stopped by my cubicle that afternoon, leaning casually against the partition with manufactured friendliness. No hard feelings about Friday, right? Just being honest. You understand. Of course, I replied smoothly, maintaining eye contact. Honest feedback helps me grow professionally. His smile faltered slightly. He'd expected tears or anger, not calm agreement. 2 weeks later, a corporate memo landed in everyone's inbox simultaneously. Subject: Major client transition. Leadership opportunity. CoreVantage had just acquired its biggest contract in 5 years. A regional vice president would be brought in specifically to oversee the transition. That VP would personally select a new team lead for the high-profile project. Mark immediately began campaigning aggressively. He told anyone who'd listen that the position was basically his already. He'd worked on similar contracts before. He had the experience, the connections, the proven track record. I said nothing publicly, but I remembered something important from 2 years ago. I'd mentored a junior analyst named Nadia who transferred to our biggest client's innovation team. We'd stayed in touch sporadically, exchanging occasional emails about industry trends and career development. Small world. Quiet advantage. I sent Nadia a casual message. Congrats on your team's new partnership with CoreVantage. Excited to see what you all build together. Her reply came within an hour. Thanks so much. Our VP is actually transferring there to manage it personally. Should be really interesting to watch. I filed that information away very carefully. Mark continued his loud campaign, dropping hints in meetings, positioning himself strategically. Meanwhile, I worked quietly, making sure every deliverable was flawless, every detail perfect. Friday afternoon, I found myself in line at the cafe on the ground floor of our building. I reached for the last sugar packet at the exact moment someone else did. A woman with sharp brown eyes and silver-streaked hair laughed warmly. You first. We can split it, I offered, tearing it open carefully. We ended up chatting while waiting for our orders. She talked eloquently about leadership burnout, the challenge of building teams in new environments, the exhaustion of corporate politics, and constant positioning. I listened more than I spoke, asking genuine questions. When she asked where I worked, I simply said, CoreVantage Operations Division. No bragging. No name-dropping. No agenda. Just authenticity. As we parted, she extended her hand professionally. I'm Victoria Torres. I start as Regional VP on Monday. My heart skipped a beat, but my face stayed perfectly calm. Mia Carter. Welcome to CoreVantage. I have a feeling we'll be seeing each other, she said with a knowing smile. I walked back upstairs, mind racing. I hadn't known who she was during our conversation. I hadn't been performing or positioning myself strategically. But she'd remember me now, not as someone trying to impress her, but as someone genuine and thoughtful. Sometimes the best networking happens when you're not trying at all. Monday morning, Mark dumped a thick folder on my desk unceremoniously. Client data needs reorganizing. Victoria Torres wants clean files by Wednesday morning. He was already halfway out the door when he added dismissively, "Don't mess this up." I spent the next 2 days meticulously organizing every document. I color-coded sections for easy navigation, created a comprehensive index, highlighted discrepancies that needed immediate clarification, and added detailed notes suggesting process improvements based on patterns I'd noticed. I didn't just meet the deadline. I exceeded every expectation. Wednesday at 9 a.m., I emailed the completed files to Victoria with a brief, professional note. Client transition documents as requested. Please let me know if you need any clarification on the recommendations. 20 minutes later, she replied, "This is excellent work, Mia. Can we schedule time to discuss your insights in detail?" Mark appeared at my cubicle 5 minutes after that, face flushed. "Did you send those files directly to Victoria?" "You asked me to have them ready for her," I said calmly, maintaining steady eye contact. His jaw tightened visibly. "I meant you should send them to me first for review. You didn't specify that in your instructions. But I copied you on the email," I pointed out factually. He stalked away without another word, his anger barely contained. Victoria called me into her office that afternoon. Her space was still mostly empty, boxes stacked in corners, but her desk was already organized with military precision. "Tell me about the team dynamics here," she said directly, gesturing for me to sit. I chose my words carefully and honestly. "We have strong individual contributors with deep expertise. Communication could be more streamlined across departments." "And leadership?" she asked, watching me closely. I paused, considering my answer thoughtfully. I think leadership emerges from consistent follow-through more than titles or hierarchy. She leaned back in her chair, studying me intently. You speak like someone who's already leading, even without the formal title. Something in her tone suggested she'd already heard about Mark. Maybe from Nadia. Maybe from her own careful observations during her first days. I try to serve the work first, I said simply and honestly. She smiled approvingly. Keep doing exactly that. When I left her office, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. For the first time in months, my voice had been heard without interruption, without dismissal, without being talked over. It felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater. Mark didn't like that development at all. By Thursday, whispers started circulating that I was playing favorites and cozying up to the new VP for personal advancement. She's trying to climb over people, someone said in the break room, not realizing I was around the corner getting water. Let them talk. Every rumor only revealed how threatened they actually felt. Meanwhile, I just worked consistently, quietly, flawlessly, without drama. I responded to emails promptly, caught errors before they escalated into problems, and helped junior team members without expecting recognition or credit. My calm consistency made Mark increasingly nervous. He started checking my work obsessively, looking desperately for mistakes he could highlight publicly. When he found none, he'd create artificial problems, changing requirements at the last minute, moving deadlines without proper notice, adding unnecessary complexity where none was needed. I documented everything meticulously. Every changed instruction, every impossible deadline, every moving goalpost. And I met them all anyway, without complaint. Because the best response to sabotage is consistent excellence. Small shifts began happening around the office gradually. People started looping me into email threads again. Junior analysts asked for my opinion during meetings. When Mark wasn't present, colleagues naturally deferred to me. I didn't claim authority. It simply emerged organically. Late one Tuesday evening, my phone buzzed with a message. Victoria, would you be open to leading the transition project if we restructure the team? My pulse spiked immediately. I read the message 3 times carefully, making sure I understood correctly. I typed slowly and deliberately. Yes. But I'd want to ensure all processes are fully reviewed before any final decisions are made. I didn't want the position handed to me as a favor. I wanted it earned through demonstrable merit, with full transparency and proper process. Her response came immediately. Exactly the answer I was hoping for. Let's talk tomorrow morning. I set my phone down, hands trembling slightly. Not from nervousness, but from the weight of real possibility. This was actually happening. The next morning, Victoria announced a comprehensive internal audit. All project files, all documentation, all performance records would be reviewed thoroughly before restructuring decisions were finalized. Mark laughed it off casually in the morning meeting. Standard corporate procedure. Nothing to worry about here. But I saw him glance nervously at his laptop afterward. The audit request was straightforward. Submit all project documentation with clear attribution of work completed. I handed over my meticulously organized files. Every project had timestamps, revision histories, and crystal-clear records of my specific contributions. Mark's submissions arrived 3 days late, scattered and incomplete. I didn't need to say anything. The documentation spoke eloquently for itself. During a team meeting the following week, Mark tried his old tactic again. When a client question arose about a process I'd personally designed, he started to answer confidently. Actually, Victoria interrupted gently but firmly, I believe Mia created that workflow. Mia? The room fell silent instantly. I explained the process clearly and thoroughly, referencing the documentation I'd submitted during the audit. The client nodded, satisfied with the explanation. Mark's face reddened, but he said nothing. For the first time in years, he couldn't talk his way out of reality. After the meeting, several colleagues approached me with questions they'd normally have asked Mark. The power dynamic was shifting visibly, slowly, but unmistakably. His confidence began showing obvious cracks. Mark stumbled over presentations he used to deliver smoothly. He snapped at Tyler, our intern, during a minor mistake. He triple-checked his words around me, afraid of contradiction or correction. I didn't gloat. His unraveling was entirely self-inflicted. But I noticed Victoria watching these interactions carefully, taking mental notes. One afternoon, she pulled me aside privately. "How long has this dynamic existed?" "A while," I said carefully, not wanting to seem vindictive. She nodded knowingly. "I'm seeing a clear pattern in the audit results. We'll talk more next week." The following Monday, Victoria called me into her office first thing. "We're restructuring the team," she said without preamble. "The announcement goes out Friday. I wanted you to know first." My heart raced. She smiled genuinely. "You've earned this, Mia. Your work speaks for itself." "What position?" I managed to ask. "Acting team lead for the client transition. If performance meets expectations over the next quarter, we'll make it permanent." I walked out of her office study on the outside, while my mind spun frantically. 4 days until the announcement. 4 days to prepare mentally for everything to change. 2 days before the announcement, I discovered my name had been removed from the final project draft. Classic Mark. He'd edited the shared document overnight, attributing my sections to generic team effort while highlighting his own contributions prominently. I didn't confront him. I simply enabled version tracking, restored my name, and sent Victoria a brief email. "Notice some attribution inconsistencies in the shared doc. I've restored the accurate version." Her reply came within minutes. "Good catch, Mia. Documentation matters. No drama. No accusations. Just facts." Friday morning arrived. I dressed carefully in my gray suit, the one I'd bought but never felt confident enough to wear. Today, I felt confident. At 10 a.m., the email landed in everyone's inbox. Subject: Team Restructuring. Transition Leadership Update. Effective immediately, Mia Carter will serve as acting team lead for the client transition project. My phone exploded with congratulatory messages from colleagues across departments. Mark's name was conspicuously absent from those messages. He appeared at my cubicle 20 minutes later, face flushed, jaw clenched tight. "You think this'll last?" he said, voice low and tight with anger. I looked up calmly. "I think it's just starting. Victoria doesn't know you like I do. You'll crack under pressure eventually." I stood, meeting his eyes levelly. "I've been under pressure for 5 years, Mark. I just stopped letting you see it." He opened his mouth, closed it, and walked away. Tyler watched from across the room, barely concealing a smile. Monday morning brought my first team meeting as lead. Same conference room. Same long table. Different seat entirely. I sat at the head. Mark sat to my left, silent, tablet open for notes. I led the meeting smoothly, building on the agenda I'd prepared over the weekend. The team engaged readily, asking questions, offering suggestions. When we wrapped up, several people thanked me directly. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. After the meeting, Mark found me by the elevator. "You know this isn't personal, right?" he said, voice attempting casualness. I pressed the button, watching the floor numbers descend. "It wasn't personal when you humiliated me either." The elevator doors opened. I stepped in. He stayed behind. The following week, corporate released the audit results. My department earned the highest compliance score in the division. Mark's files were flagged for procedural inconsistencies and incomplete documentation. His projects were quietly reassigned. I didn't celebrate. I just worked because that was always the fundamental difference between us. 2 weeks into my new role, Victoria called both of us into her office. "We're finalizing the restructuring plan," she said. "During this transition phase, reporting lines need clarity." Mark nodded, assuming this was routine. Victoria looked at him directly. "Mark, you'll report to Mia for the duration of this project. She'll handle your performance reviews and assignment allocation." The color drained from his face. He managed a stiff nod. I simply said, "Understood." That afternoon, Mark appeared at my office door, my actual office now, not a cubicle. "Do you have time to review this report?" His voice was carefully neutral. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Of course. Please sit." He sat stiffly, sliding the document across. I reviewed it thoroughly, making detailed notes. His work was adequate but rushed. This needs more detail in section 3, I said calmly. Please revise and have it back to me by Friday. Friday? That's 3 days. I looked up. Is that insufficient time?
He swallowed. No.
Friday works. Thank you, Mark. Over the next 2 weeks, Mark's performance deteriorated further. He missed deadlines repeatedly, made calculation errors, seemed unable to focus properly. I documented everything, provided clear feedback, and offered support he never accepted. Finally, he requested a meeting with Victoria. I wasn't invited, but I heard the outcome. He'd resigned, effective in 2 weeks. Pursuing new opportunities, the announcement said vaguely. When he cleared his desk, he avoided looking at me. I didn't gloat. I simply nodded once, acknowledgement, not triumph. Some people can't handle working for those they once dismissed. 3 months later, Victoria called me into her office again. The transition project exceeded all performance targets, she said. Client satisfaction scores are the highest in company history. I waited, sensing more was coming. We're making your position permanent. Congratulations, Director Carter. The title hit me like a wave.
Director.
Not acting lead. Not temporary.
Director.
My chest tightened, not from pride alone, but from relief. 5 years of invisible work, finally visible. Thank you, I managed. I won't let you down. You haven't yet, Victoria said with a warm smile. That's why you're here. I left the building that evening as the sun set over the city, painting the glass towers gold and amber. I thought about that conference room, Mark's casual cruelty, the 20 silent faces watching my humiliation. Let's be honest, Mia's not leadership material. I smiled, pulling my coat tighter against the autumn breeze. I never shouted. I never plotted revenge. I didn't need to. I just became undeniable. When someone tells you you're not leadership material, thank them quietly. They've just shown you exactly what kind of leader not to become. And sometimes, that's the most valuable lesson of all. I walked toward the parking garage, my reflection caught in the building's glass, steady, certain, and finally recognized. Not because I demanded it loudly, because I earned it quietly. The presentation that Mark had hijacked that day? It became the foundation for our most successful client relationship. My name was on every document now. Tyler, the intern Mark had snapped at, was now my direct report. He was thriving under mentorship instead of criticism. The colleagues who'd whispered about me, they were some of my strongest supporters now. And Mark? I heard he'd taken a position at a smaller firm. I wished him well genuinely. His story didn't need to be part of mine anymore. Success, I'd learned, wasn't about proving people wrong. It was about proving yourself right. 6 months into my role as director, I implemented changes Mark had always blocked. Flexible work schedules, transparent performance metrics, regular team feedback sessions. Productivity increased by 37%. Employee satisfaction scores doubled. Victoria featured our department in the company newsletter, Model of Effective Leadership. I framed that article, not for ego, but as a reminder of how far I'd come. One afternoon, I received a LinkedIn message from Mark. Congratulations on your success. I should have recognized your potential sooner. I read it twice, considered my response carefully. Then I typed, thank you. I wish you well in your career.
Short.
Professional. Final. I didn't need his validation anymore. That need had died in the restroom mirror the day he humiliated me. The annual company awards ceremony arrived. I was nominated for Innovation Leadership. I didn't win. A colleague from the engineering department did, and she absolutely deserved it. But sitting in that audience, watching her accept the award, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Contentment. I didn't need awards. I had something better. Respect earned through consistency. Tyler stopped by my office the next day. Can I ask you something? Always. How did you stay calm when Mark was undermining you? I would have quit or fought back. I leaned back, considering. Fighting back would have made his narrative true. Quitting would have let him win. I chose a third option, becoming so good they couldn't ignore me. He nodded thoughtfully. That takes patience. It takes self-belief. I corrected. Patience is just what it looks like from the outside. A year after that fateful presentation, Victoria called me into her office again.
We're expanding, she said.
Creating a new division focused on operational excellence. I want you to lead it. Lead a division? I repeated, making sure I understood. You've proven yourself repeatedly. This is the natural next step. I accepted without hesitation. The new division launched 3 months later. I hired carefully, prioritizing potential over pedigree. Several of my team members were people others had overlooked, just like I'd been. We became known internally as the department that gave people second chances, that saw talent others missed. One of my first hires was a quiet analyst named James who'd been passed over for promotions repeatedly despite brilliant work. Sound familiar? I mentored him the way I wish someone had mentored me. Within 6 months, he was leading major projects. You saw something in me nobody else did, he told me once. No, I corrected. I saw what everyone else refused to see. There's a difference. My leadership style became my signature. Quiet, supportive, data-driven, focused on elevating others rather than elevating myself. The opposite of Mark in every way. And it worked. 2 years after becoming director, I was invited to speak at a women's leadership conference. The topic, Leading from the Shadows, How Quiet Competence Beats Loud Confidence. Standing on that stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, I thought about Mia from 5 years ago. The one who believed hard work spoke for itself. The one who'd been humiliated in a conference room. Someone once told me publicly I'd never be leadership material. I began. He was right. I'd never be his kind of leader. And that's exactly why I succeeded. The audience leaned forward. Loud leaders take credit. Quiet leaders build credit. Loud leaders demand respect. Quiet leaders earn it. Loud leaders fear strong teams. Quiet leaders build them. After my speech, dozens of women approached me with their own stories of being dismissed, overlooked, underestimated. I listened to each one, took their cards, followed up later, because I remembered what it felt like to be invisible, and I refused to let anyone feel that way on my watch. One woman, tears in her eyes, said, "Your story gave me hope. I'm in a situation just like yours." Document everything, I advised. Stay excellent. Let the work speak. And never, ever let them see you doubt yourself. She nodded. What if they never notice? Then you'll notice. And eventually someone who matters will too. Trust the process. 3 years after the presentation incident, CoreVantage promoted me to Senior Director of Operations. I now oversaw 6 departments, 200 employees, a budget in the millions. Mark's old position? It was 3 levels below mine now. I didn't gloat, but I did acknowledge the irony. Victoria retired that year. At her farewell party, she pulled me aside. "You know what I saw in you that day at the cafe?" "What?" "Someone who listened more than she talked. In leadership, that's rare and valuable." "You took a chance on me," I said. She shook her head. "I didn't take a chance. I made a calculated bet based on evidence. There's a difference." After she left, the CEO appointed me to the executive committee. The youngest member. The only woman. My first committee meeting felt surreal. I was making decisions that would affect thousands of employees. But I remembered my roots. The cubicle. The humiliation. The quiet determination. I never forgot where I came from. One day, I received a call from Mark. He wanted to catch up, he said. Network. I agreed to coffee. He looked older. Tired. The arrogance had faded into something resembling humility. "I owe you an apology," he said. "What I did was wrong." "Yes, it was." I agreed simply. "Do you forgive me?" I considered. "I've moved past it. Forgiveness implies I'm still holding something. I'm not." 5 years after that presentation, I was profiled in a business magazine. Mia Carter, the leader who leads by listening. The article detailed my rise, my management philosophy, my impact on CoreVantage's culture. It mentioned Mark's comment briefly. She faced early skepticism but proved her doubters wrong through consistent excellence. Skepticism. That was generous phrasing. But I didn't correct it. The past was past. What mattered was the present I'd built and the future I was creating. My team won every performance metric that year. Highest employee satisfaction. Lowest turnover. Greatest innovation output. We celebrated with a team dinner. No speeches. No awards. Just people who respected each other enjoying success together. Tyler, now a manager himself, raised his glass. To Mia, who taught us that leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in a room. Everyone cheered. I looked around the table at faces of people I'd mentored, supported, believed in. This was my legacy. Not titles or promotions. People. Later that night, alone in my office, I pulled up that old email. The one where Mark had humiliated me. I read it one last time. Then I deleted it permanently. I didn't need it anymore. The woman who needed documentation, evidence, validation, she didn't exist anymore. 7 years after the incident, I was promoted to vice president of operations. I now had a corner office, an assistant, a seat at the highest table. But I still remembered to listen, to notice the quiet ones, to see the overlooked, because I'd been them. A young analyst named Maya reminded me of myself. Brilliant but soft-spoken, constantly interrupted in meetings. I started mentoring her, teaching her to document, to build evidence, to trust her confidence. What if they never see my potential? She asked. Then you'll see it for them, I replied. And eventually, your work will be impossible to ignore. She became one of my strongest team leaders. The cycle continued. One day, the CEO called me. We're considering you for Chief Operating Officer.
Coup.
The C-suite. I'm honored. I managed. You've earned it. Let me know by next week. I walked through the building that afternoon, past the conference room where Mark had humiliated me. They'd renovated it since then, but I knew which room it was. I stood in the doorway for a moment. That room had broken me. And in breaking me, it had rebuilt me into something stronger. Thank you, I whispered to the empty space. Then I walked away. I accepted the COO position. At 39, I was the youngest C-suite executive in CoreVantage's history. My first action? Implementing a mentorship program for overlooked talent. My second? Requiring leadership training that emphasized listening over talking. At my COO announcement, the CEO said, Mia leads with quiet authority. She doesn't demand respect. She earns it daily. I thought about Mark's words from years ago. Not leadership material. He was wrong. But he'd also been right. I was never going to be his kind of leader.
Loud. Brash.
Taking credit. I was my kind of leader. Quiet. Supportive. Giving credit. And that made all the difference. After the announcement, I received hundreds of messages. One stood out. From Mark. Congratulations on COO. You've built something remarkable. I'm genuinely proud, even though I have no right to be. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied, Thank you. I hope you're building something meaningful too. Because I meant it. His journey wasn't mine to judge anymore. I had my own path now. That evening, I stood in my new office, looking out at the city lights. 10 years ago, I'd been a junior analyst who believed hard work was enough. 5 years ago, I'd been humiliated in a conference room. Today, I was COO. The journey hadn't been linear. It had been messy, painful, full of doubt. But I'd learned something crucial. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need to believe in yourself long enough to prove them wrong. A decade after the incident, I was invited to give the keynote at CoreVantage's annual leadership summit. I titled it, The Power of Quiet Leadership. Standing before 500 employees, I told my story. All of it. The humiliation, the documentation, the quiet persistence. Someone once told me I wasn't leadership material, I said. He was measuring me against the wrong standard. Loud doesn't equal effective. Confident doesn't equal competent. Visible doesn't equal valuable. The room was silent. I spent years trying to be louder, to be more visible, to be less myself. It was exhausting and ineffective. I paused. The breakthrough came when I stopped trying to be seen and started ensuring my work couldn't be unseen. Documentation. Excellence. Consistency. After the keynote, a young man approached me nervously. "I'm in your old position. Operations analyst. My director just told me I'm not leadership material." I looked at him carefully. "What do you think?" "I think he's wrong." "Then prove it." "Not to him. To yourself." He nodded, energized. I handed him my card. "Document everything. Build your case. When you're ready, email me." Because the cycle continues. And this time, I could be the person I needed years ago. 15 years after the incident, I was promoted to president of operations. Only the CEO was above me now. I'd climbed as high as I could without his job. And I was content because I'd never been driven by titles. I'd been driven by impact. Under my leadership, CoreVantage became known as the best place to work in our industry. Lowest turnover. Highest satisfaction. Most innovation. We won awards. But more importantly, we changed lives. I received a letter from Maya, the analyst I'd mentored. She was now a director at another company. "You taught me that leadership isn't about being the loudest voice. It's about amplifying the quietest ones." I carry that lesson daily. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible. I framed that letter. It meant more than any award. One afternoon, scrolling through LinkedIn, I saw Mark's profile. He was doing well. Director at a mid-sized firm. Seemed happy. I was genuinely glad. Because his story and mine had diverged years ago. I no longer needed him to be the villain in my narrative. He was just a person who'd made mistakes. Like everyone. Including me. 20 years after the incident, I sat in my office, preparing for retirement. I'd accomplished more than I dreamed possible. Changed more lives than I could count. But the moment I was proudest of wasn't a promotion or award. It was a message from Tyler, now a VP himself. "You taught me that true leadership means creating more leaders, not more followers. That legacy lives on through everyone you've mentored. Thank you for seeing potential in a nervous intern years ago." I thought about that conference room, about Mark's words, about the woman I'd been. Not leadership material. He was right in a way. I was never going to lead his way. I was going to lead better. As I walked out of the building for the last time, I passed that renovated conference room. I didn't stop. Didn't pause. Because I'd stopped living in that moment years ago. I'd created new moments. Better ones. Moments of mentorship, growth, impact. When someone tells you you're not leadership material, thank them. They just gave you the blueprint for the leader you'll become. Not loud. Not brash. Not demanding. But undeniable. And that's the best kind of leader there is.